Welcome to another episode of A Game of Two Halves. The first one was a roaring success, so we're back again, this time reviewing the FA Cup. I've got with me today Matty and Rory from last time, and we've got a new lad on the pod today, Nick. Welcome to Nick. He's a big United fan, knows his football. I'm sure you'll enjoy having him on. So let's get cracking. Firstly, we're going to look at the FA Cup. So first game we had up, Burnley and Bournemouth. Matty, you're a Burnley fan, so we'll come to you first. Big missed opportunity for Burnley there.
100% a big missed opportunity. I don't think we'll ever get as good of a chance to get into a cup quarter final in a good few years as we did the other day. We had a good tie on paper against Bournemouth, and I think it's like you say, it's a massive missed opportunity. I think the starting 11 we put out, I think you could just tell, couldn't you, from as soon as the team sheet came out that I think it was only ever going one way. It was a weak side, and I feel Dyche kind of disrespected the cup in some regards. But obviously, our main focus this year is to stay in the Premier League, and I think what says it all is that Eric Peters was going to play, and he was supposed to be banned. So I think that says it all. But no, like you say, massive missed opportunity and a poor performance as well from Burnley.
Yeah, Rory, we spoke off air, didn't we? And we said like Dyche made 8 changes, but it's not just the fact he made 8 changes. The fact of sort of who we brought in is probably one of the biggest issues that we have. Would you agree?
Yeah, there's not a lot of depth in this Burnley team. I think it's some at the start of the season there was something like 15, 16 fit senior players. The additions were needed, but none came in. This FA Cup game really, like Matty said, it was a massive missed opportunity. Bournemouth haven't really been on the best run of form. They've just sacked the manager, so it was a really good chance for Burnley to be able to get themselves into a quarter final. Plus, it's not like they're probably not going to go down in the league. So I just don't understand why Dyche made that many changes because they're not in a dogfight. So it just doesn't really make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, Rory he makes a good point there about teams who aren't potentially going to go down from the Prem, and you think, oh yeah, they're going to be safe. So I'll come to you, Nick. Are you surprised that teams like Burnley, maybe Wolves, Southampton, Crystal Palace, teams of that ilk, don't take the cup more seriously?
Yeah, I say it every year the same thing. I think it's an opportunity for them to actually get to Wembley because I think some of the bigger teams now, especially with them playing sort of second string teams, it's a massive opportunity for the likes of Burnley, Southampton, even some of the top end Championship clubs to get. It's a one off game, so they could find themselves getting to a final. It's just all about look at the draw and who you get, but I didn't really understand it at all with Dyche, and like you say, Wolves as well. I think that was a massive missed opportunity for me. I think they could have definitely turned Southampton over with the form that they've been in recently. But hey, strange things happen. Maybe they have just literally got their eyes focused on the league, and that's it.
Yeah, Matty, I'm going to come back to you. You were itching to come in on something there.
I was just about to say, yeah, you mentioned about Burnley not being in any great danger of going down this year. And I think we know, don't we? All Burnley fans want every year is a cup run. We all mention it. We all mention about getting drawn against Man City every year, and this was a great chance for a half decent cup run and to not put the strongest side out. And it was a very poor display from Burnley. It's obviously disappointing, and I think you touched on it. We're not in great danger of going down, are we? We're 8 points adrift of Fulham at the minute, and to put it into perspective, Fulham have only won 2 games all season, so I think we every Burnley fan has their own opinion on it, but for me, yeah, it was a massive missed opportunity for sure, and it doesn't look like we're going down either. So it was a great chance, and like I say again, the selection that the starting 11 that Dyche chose, I thought was very poor, and it showed that in the result. And credit goes to Bournemouth as well. They did batter us for 90 minutes, if we're honest. We never really had a clear-cut chance, really, apart from the one Jay Rodriguez put over the bar, but which he should have scored. But apart from that, I thought felt Bournemouth fully deserved it. They played some good football and they did actually batter us for 90 minutes, really.
I know we mentioned on here the other day about a certain Bruno Fernandes. Going to move on to United now and going to come back to something that was mentioned on the last podcast from yourself, Matty, and Rory certainly agreed with you about the Bruno Fernandes effect. And I think we certainly saw that in United's game with West Ham. Fernandes came off the bench and sort of just give United that little bit of extra impetus going forward, which they probably needed to beat West Ham the other night. So, Rory, did Man United back up exactly what you were saying about Fernandes?
Yeah, I think they did. They seem to struggle creatively when he's not playing, but when he comes on, he always seems to make that impact. Even if he's having a quiet game, he'll pop up with something. But the biggest one seems to be for the last month or two. Scott McTominay's really started chipping in. He's scored some big goals in big moments for United recently. I think he deserves a bit of a shout out for his performances of late, especially considering he's not considered one of the big names on the team sheet.
Yeah, Nick, you're the resident United fan here, so extra time needed to beat West Ham. But what was your assessment of the game in general? I think United certainly wasn't for the want of trying. I just don't think they could really cut open West Ham. And again, that comes back to the fact that maybe you miss Bruno Fernandes when he's not playing.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, really. I think that we had the majority of the possession. We were probably the only team looking like scoring, but West Ham were just solid defensively. I mean, there was times when they had like 6 or 7 on the edge of their own box, and it was like try and break it down. And without someone like Bruno in there, we found that difficult. I've said this a few times though to other United fans. I don't understand why we play with 2 holding midfielders against teams like that. You know that West Ham are going to come and probably sit in and try and play on the break. We could have gone with 1 defensive midfielder and then 2 number 8s. And I think it showed. McTominay's getting into those goal scoring positions. I know he came off the bench, but he's getting into those goal scoring positions. And if he's on the pitch and we're playing against a team like that, I don't know why they don't push him further forward. He showed against Leeds he can score goals, and I think he was actually a striker when he was younger, so he's got the ability to do it. But on the whole, I think that we were the ones that looked like we were going to win it. I never really felt threatened by West Ham at all. It was just I just didn't want it to go to penalties, and to be honest, I didn't really want it to go to extra time. I don't think we needed it, but at the end of the day, that's what happened. But we got through, and that's the main thing.
Yeah, certainly right. Progression into the quarters is everything that's at stake at this point in the cup. Go on, Rory.
I just want to touch on something that Nick said there about about United looking like the only team that was scoring. I think West Ham are having a great season, but I think the one thing that might cost them at some points this season is the fact that they didn't invest in a striker in January, because with Mikhail Antonio getting injured, they were forced to play youth up front, which it can work because you can find some emerging talents, but it's a lot of pressure to put on a kid, especially if the expectations of West Ham fans are growing with them having a decent season and potentially expecting a push for top 4 maybe, or a top 6 finish.
Yeah, I think we saw, didn't we? We saw Adamipo Odubeko come on off the bench to replace Yarmolenko, who went off injured, and then he actually got subbed off himself, didn't he, in injury time for Lanzini, who's more of a number 10 than a striker as such. Probably highlights the fact that they did need a striker. And Matty, they sold Haller for 20 million to Ajax, and they were linked with a few strikers. I mean, one of your men, Adam Armstrong, Rory, he was heavily linked with West Ham. And West Ham always seemed like one of those teams who were sort of a goal scorer away from maybe pushing for those European positions properly. Would you agree, Matty?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it's been clear to see West Ham have had a very strong start to the season, and again, it's not that I felt they had a really strong January. They brought in Jesse Lingard for starters, who I think he will have attracted a lot of Premier League attention anyway. So no, that's great. That's a great signing from West Ham. But yeah, definitely, I think like Rory said, there'll be a bit probably disappointed not to bring a striker in. I know Moyes kind of said early on or later on in the transfer window that they weren't going to bring a striker in, but one injury to Mikel Antonio, like we've seen, and the struggling, there is definitely strikers out there as well. But if he really did want to push on for the Europa League this season, I think definitely bringing a striker in would have been a sensible option. But they haven't, so we've just got to go with what they've got already, haven't they? And hope, of course, Mikel Antonio doesn't get injured again.
Yeah, definitely. I think they're definitely challenging for the Europa League places this season, but whether they can actually get there with Antonio being injured now is doubtful. Moving from the red side of Manchester to the blue side, City again, absolutely formidable against Swansea. Swansea gave a great account of themselves, in fairness. Probably better than some of the Premier League teams have given against City. Actually created some good chances. Gave them a proper game of football. But in the end, City's class showed through again. I'll come to you with Nick for this one, Nick. At City, are they unstoppable at the moment?
Playing some really good stuff, aren't they? And seems to have, since Diaz has come in, especially in the league, him and Stones have basically shut up shop. And I thought when they had no De Bruyne, no Aguero, Jesus fires on the odd occasion, it was going to be tough for them, but they look like no one's going to beat them. I mean, I think I only saw some of the Swansea game, and I agree with what you said there. I think Swansea had a really good go, and for me, that's refreshing to see because I get bored sometimes of teams going against other teams and sitting in. Like the Cities when they play the lesser teams. I always think to myself, if you go 1-0 down, if you come in to try and play for a point, and you go 1-0 down, what's your plan B? And sometimes they don't really have a plan B, so they end up they've kind of lost the game at 1-0. Whereas other teams, they conceded 3 goals, Swansea, but they came and had a go and they made it. From what I saw of it, quite an entertaining game. But City are looking really, really good. But you know what? United are going to win the FA Cup, mate. So that's all that matters.
I love your optimism. I'm not quite sure I agree with you, but Rory, 15 wins in a row for City and Tottenham to come at the weekend. Who does actually stop City at this point in this season? Obviously, they've got Everton in the Cup, so there's one possible option, but do you see anyone actually stopping them?
Well, 15 wins on the bounce at the minute, so I can't really see where the next loss is coming from. I didn't think I'd be saying that at the start of the season after they had a really poor start. But I think now that all of like Nick said, like Ruben Diaz coming in, I think a lot of now that the new signings have settled in, they seem to really look a different animal. And now you've got players that maybe weren't chipping in as much as they should have done in the past, maybe come into it. Like Gundogan's, again, as I mentioned last week, he's come in with a lot of goals now. You've got João Cancelo's really started to put some performances in. It just seems like everything's going right at the minute, and I really can't see where the next loss is going to come from.
Yeah, I think the Premier League looks as though it's coming back to Manchester. The FA Cup is starting to look along them lines, barring Everton's upsetting the odds and knocking City out. They're obviously in a League Cup final as well, and still fighting in the Champions League. So they're fighting on 4 fronts at the moment. Matty, can City do a quadruple?
I'd never say never with Pep, but we know what Man City are like when it comes to the Champions League. Like last season, we had a great chance of going even further, and I think was it Leon who knocked them out in the end, or I think it was Leon. But you can never say never with a Pep Guardiola team. Like at the minute, I don't see anyone beating them in the Premier League. I think, like we've just said, I think I might have said it in the last podcast that I don't see anyone beating him, and I can see him going on one of the runs like we did in the season where we beat Liverpool to the title by a point on the final day. I think Rory made a good point about players chipping in. You saw Ilkay Gundogan won Player of the Month today, for January, and that was fully deserved. And they do look a really good side at the minute. We always have done anyway, but now they're putting in good performances and they're blowing teams away every week. But in terms of the quadruple, I'd say never, but I'd like to think it's a little bit unlikely. But I think if we're honest, the one cup that Pep Guardiola would like to win at Man City is without a shadow of a doubt the Champions League.
So one team who will be looking to stop City winning the quadruple, someone who can stop them on two fronts, really, the FA Cup, and I guess they'll harbour outside hopes of stopping them in the Premier League. Not that I particularly think it's realistic, but it's still a mathematical possibility, and that's Leicester. We touched earlier on how teams who aren't really in any danger of being relegated or potentially fighting on many other fronts might take the FA Cup more seriously. So for you, Nick, Leicester a team who should be taking the FA Cup seriously from this moment on?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I mean, not mathematically out the title race either, but as we've touched on, City are in unbelievable form, and I think the next 3 games for them will kind of shape the season. So it may end up that City run away with it. So it's the other front that Leicester have got to kind of compete on with the Europa League as well. But 100% go for it. Put your best team out and try and get to a final. Because it'll be massive for a team like Leicester to win the FA Cup. And I still love the FA Cup. So if United can get to final win it, I want them to get there and do it. I never understand the mentality of managers when they play a second strength team when they've got nothing else to play for. Essentially, as I say, I know Leicester have, but they're getting to that final stages now where, hey, do you know what? We're right in the mix to try and win it. So let's go out and try and win it. So, for me, I think that they've got to kind of go full strength and try and beat United. Our away form's been better than our home form, so it might be a tricky game, but it's an FA Cup tie. Anything can happen on the day, so who knows? But yeah, 100%, it's a cup that Leicester can really look to win.
Go on, Rory. Are you in agreement with Nick there?
Yeah. I'm in full agreement with what Nick just said there. I think it's just important to note as well that it might have got a bit more difficult for Leicester with the news today that James Justin's out for 9 months with a ACL injury. I think that would be a really big miss because, in my opinion, he's been one of the most steady players in the league at fullback. He's been putting in some great performances for Leicester. He can cover both sides as well, play left back and right back. I think it's going to be harder now that they're missing potentially one of the best players.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point you make there about Justin. We've sat here and said about managers rotating and perhaps not taking the FA Cup too seriously. But when Brendan Rodgers perhaps does take it a bit more seriously than others and plays some of his first teamers like Justin and they pick up injuries, that is probably why we see managers like Sean Dyche at Burnley making 8 changes, especially if you've got a small squad and you're in fear of your better players sort of picking up injuries. So just moving away from Leicester again, Sheffield United, almost the league's whipping boys, rooted to the bottom as they have been all season. But they're in an FA Cup quarter-final, and it's a welcome break from the league, would you say, Matty?
Yeah, I'd say 100% a welcome break from the league. I think I personally, I didn't expect Sheffield United to be where they are this season. I didn't expect them to have such a slow start to the season. Massive fan of Chris Wilder in the way he's similar to Dyche. You know what he's gonna get from, a Chris Wilder side, 100%. And they play some really good football, the Sheffield United, and they spent a lot of money in the summer again. I think they spent £26 million on Ryan Brewster, and he's yet to hit the back of the net in the Premier League. So I think it's been a tough season for Sheffield United, but 100% a welcome break with this FA Cup run. They beat Bristol City, didn't they? 1-0 was it in the end with a Billy Sharp goal? So yeah, welcome break for them most definitely. And I wouldn't write them off just yet out of the Premier League escape either. Yeah, but like I say, 100% a welcome break for Sheffield United.
Go on, Rory. I know you're a big fan of the way Sheffield United play in Chris Wilder.
Yeah, I think last season they were very impressive. The way they pressed, the way they played with the ball. They didn't play like a newly promoted side did. But I want to touch on something that Matty brought up there about how much money they'd spent. They've spent a lot, but it really doesn't. It's really starting to look like they've not spent it well, because Ramsdale has been dropping clanger after clanger all season, and they paid 30 million for him. They paid about 20 million for Brewster. Yeah, he looked a good prospect. He had like a good half a season on loan at Swansea in the Championship. Got quite a few goals there. And like Mike said, he's not hit the net for Sheffield United in the league yet. I don't think he's hit the net for him at all yet. And then another signing that really didn't make sense is the deal for Ollie Burke as well. Like that, and the deal for selling Callum Robinson, that didn't make a lot of sense to me. Callum Robinson is twice the player that Ollie Burke is, in my opinion. Ollie Burke's had 2-3 clubs now where he's contributed next to nothing. The fans didn't rate him, the managers didn't rate him. I just don't get why he seems to be getting minutes. And while Brewster hasn't been scoring, he looked a very good prospect last season. So I think the fact that maybe Ollie Burke's starting up front over him really doesn't help his case.
Yeah, that's an interesting point you make about Burke. I mean, he went abroad, didn't he? Came back, and he's never really hit the heights that he was projected to when he left Forest. But go on, Matty.
Yeah, it's funny Rory mentioned Oliver Burke there, because I was saying, I think it might have been to you the other day, Chris. I'd really like us to have a look at Ollie Burke if Sheffield United went down. I quite like the way he plays. I think he's big, he's strong, he's got that little bit of pace with him. I think he'd add quite a lot to Burnley personally. I quite like Ollie Burke. I know his finishing sometimes isn't the best. I can't remember who he played. I think it was Brighton away. He had the chance to make it 2-0 to Brighton, and he skied it, and within 10 minutes the ball was in the back of a net at Brighton. In the back of Ramsdale's net. So I think if he can work on his finishing, I think he'd be a half decent player. But I can see where Rory's coming from. But I think Sheffield United have struggled to find the net in general this season. But I must admit, I quite like Ollie Burke as a player. I must say. He's someone I'd like us to have a look at in the summer, if I'm being honest, because it looks inevitable that Sheffield United are going down, but I wouldn't count them out of it just yet. But I quite like Ollie Burke.
Yeah, I think Ian Wright's still banging the Sheffield United drum on match today, but I'm not quite sure even he believes that they can stay up. So moving on from Sheffield United, on to probably the game of the round, I guess, really. I don't think anything rivaled this. We've got the Everton Spurs 5-4 game after extra time. Obviously, Everton originally came from behind to take a 3-1 lead and then blew a 3-1 lead, went 4-3 up, then blew that, only to take the lead again in extra time. So, Nick, it's surely got to go down as one of the great FA Cup games, this one.
Oh, it was unbelievable. I had it on, and I was just like, wow, it grips you. Two teams, I can't honestly say I ever saw a Jose Mourinho game ending 5-4, especially in recent times. Like, it's normally quite low scoring, but, Spurs went out, obviously, scored, then capitulated at the back, and Everton were class going forward. It was just end to end. It was one of those games that you won't forget in a hurry. It was a great cup tie, and I think that's what the FA Cup's needed as well. Because I think in some people's eyes, it's a competition that's not taken as seriously anymore. It's not as important now. I've said it in the past about the FA Cup. I mean, I love the FA Cup, but some of the draws, and it's a lottery at the end of the day, but some of the draws can be quite boring. I always look for, especially in the early rounds, when a lower league team can go to a Premier League team, or, the Premier League team's going to their ground, like we saw this year with Spurs and Marine, it captures the imagination, but you then, beyond that, need these types of games, and it just kind of, for the neutral, it was brilliant. I can't imagine what it would have been like for an Everton or a Tottenham fan sat there watching it, but as I say, for the neutral, it was unbelievable. And fair play to Everton, for getting over the line and getting the win. I'm sure Tottenham and the fans will be disappointed though, because I think they'll have seen it again as another opportunity to go to Wembley.
Yeah, you touch on it there being end to end, and I certainly agree with that. I think 4-4 was at full time was probably a good scoreline for both teams, because it really could have been anything. I know Everton at the post, Spurs forced Olsen to make some brilliant saves. It could genuinely have been 7-5 or to either team, and no one could have complained. But go on, Rory.
Like Nick said, I can't remember seeing a Jose Mourinho team end in a game that ended 5-4 or a score like that. I remember seeing a quote the other day about when he was Chelsea manager, he made a snidey comment about an Arsenal game that finished 5-4, and he said it's a hockey score, not a football score. But another something with Spurs as well that's really not gone well is the signing of Gareth Bale. He's looked like he was left out of the squad entirely at the weekend, and for this game, sorry, not at the weekend. And then he made an Instagram post today talking about how he had a good training session midweek, and Mourinho said in a press conference today that he was exaggerating the reality or something. And that's this situation. It's really starting to look like Real Madrid were potentially right about Gareth Bale, and that his head's not in it, and he just doesn't put the effort in, because there's no other excuse for him not to be playing, because he's more than good enough to be playing. But as for Everton, I think this is one of the games where you really saw what Gylfi Sigurdsson's capable of. The problem with him is he only produces these performances occasionally now, but he used to perform like this consistently. But I think we're really starting to see what Everton have been lacking over the last few years, and that's the influence of a world-class manager.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. Ancelotti's really transformed Everton in a little over a year, really. He's transformed them from being like a bottom half side who no one feared at all to someone who you really don't want to play, especially at the moment. And going back to the start of the season, they were top of the league, weren't they, for a bit? They won 4 out of 4, I think, at the start of the season. And they were the team you really didn't want to play. Go on, Matty.
I was just, it's a great point Rory makes about Gareth Bale, but I think, I don't think Gareth Bale could play under a worse manager than Jose Mourinho at the moment, to be honest with you. We all know what Mourinho's like with players. If he doesn't like a player, he's not going to play that player. I think we saw it with Luke Shaw at Man United. We're seeing it at the moment with not only Gareth Bale but Dele Alli. We all know what a top class player Dele Alli is, and he's not getting the minutes either at the moment for Tottenham Hotspur. Vinicius Junior, another one who's come in. He scored goals in the FA Cup and the Europa League. I know he scored a trick against Marine and celebrated like he just scored a trick against Man United in the FA Cup final, but that's not the point. He's scoring goals in the Europa League and the Champions League, and he's not really getting a game. And I know it's always going to be hard for a striker going to Tottenham, because are you ever going to replace Harry Kane? No, you're probably not. And it's a tough one with Gareth Bale, because I think Tottenham have so much strength and depth up front. They have, in that final third area, they have Lucas Moura, they have Harry Kane, Heung-min Son, Steven Bergwijn. There's so many choices for Jose Mourinho to choose from. Just 9 times out of 10, Gareth Bale doesn't seem to get a game, and I think he started against Brighton, didn't he? In the 1-0 defeat. So it, when Gareth Bale does get the chance to get on that pitch and show Jose Mourinho about, he's got to be finding the net, and he struggled to do that this season. Apart from that header which he won Tottenham the game with against Brighton earlier on in the year, but apart from that, we've not really seen Gareth Bale do much in the Premier League this season or in the Europa League. Obviously, we don't see what's going on at training, but it's pretty clear and obvious that Mourinho doesn't really fancy Gareth Bale or Dele Alli either at the moment.
Yeah, you mentioned about Mourinho teams, and Bale not probably thriving under Mourinho, but I think one of the biggest issues Tottenham have probably faced the amount of goals they're conceding. When he came in, he was banging the Eric Dyer drum, and he really he couldn't play without Eric Dyer when he first at the start of this season. Anyway, he really loved playing with Dyer, and now he can't seem to find like a settled partnership at the back. Do you think that's constituting to the fact that they're conceding so many goals, Rory?
Yeah, the defence has been really poor in the last few weeks. Doherty, when he's played, he's really not looked very good. It looks like Wolves have got a hell of a deal getting him off the books for, 50 million, something like that. Looks like they've had a hell of a deal, and they've got a decent fullback in his position in Nelson Semedo. But yeah, but Spurs' defence has been all over the place, which is really not what you expect to see from a Spurs side, especially when you've got good defensive players like Alderweireld and Davinson Sanchez. Even Dyer's a very competent centre back, but the defence has been all over the place. I just want to touch on what Matty said about Mourinho falling out with players, and he's got a track record for it. I think it's harsh on Mourinho to put Dele Alli in that bracket, because if you watch the Spurs documentary on Amazon, you see how much he does rate Dele Alli, but he just wants that extra bit of effort from him. He wants him to work for the team. He wants him to be pressing, but Dele Alli just doesn't strike me as that sort of player. He just seems very laid back when he's playing. He likes to sort of drift around up the top end of the pitch and wait for his team to win the ball back, but that's really not what Mourinho wants.
Yeah, Ali's certainly almost a victim of the system, isn't he, at Tottenham in many ways. But moving on from Tottenham, onto Southampton, and again, like we touched on with Leicester, this is surely a great chance for them to get into a cup semi-final. They've been drawn away at Bournemouth, haven't they? And we know Bournemouth are dangerous. They've just knocked Burnley out. But Southampton are a different animal to Burnley. They've got more squad depth, and I'm pretty sure Ralph Hasenhüttl will take that game very seriously. Great chance for him to get to Wembley, somewhere where I don't think they've been since they played Man United in the cup final back in, oh God, you testing me when it was. I couldn't tell you, but I think that's the last time they went to Wembley. So, again, beat a Wolves team who are pretty poor at the moment. I'm not really sure what's got into Wolves. Changed the system up a little bit. And if I come to you on this one, Nick, what do you think's got into Wolves recently? They're just a different animal, pardon the pun, to last season.
I think missing Jimenez is massive for them, especially going forward. You know, they had that focal point, and he guaranteed you goals. I mean, he's an exceptional talent. He's some player. Whereas I think this season, after him, they've not really got anybody up at the top end of the pitch who's going to put the ball in the back of the net every weekend, or looks a threat. It's a bit like it's half chances, or they're just not creating an awful lot for me. And at the back, it's very, very strange. I'm not sure where this has come from, because again, they're another team that you could probably rely on the other season. In previous seasons that have been solid at the back. With the likes of Connor Cody and there. It's a very, very bizarre season, but it's the Premier League for you. It's very unforgiving. You can't make mistakes in the league, and you can't have an off game, because if you do, you get found out. And I think that's just been Wolves' downfall this season. I just think that they've just not quite been at it. And at the top end of the pitch, they've really missed Raul Jimenez, and they spent quite a lot of money on was it Fabio Silva in the summer, and he's not really hit it off. They bought in Willian Jose now. It's very, very early days for him, so it's unfair to say whether he's going to be a success or not. It's going to take him some time to get up and running, but all over the pitch. Other than that, like Rory said earlier, Doherty going, it's other than that, it's virtually the same. So it's just I'm putting it down to a case of bad luck, and they'll come. But I think they'll come again next season. I don't think it'll be long before they start challenging them and pushing themselves back up the league. As I say, that might be next season, but I do think it'll come back at some stage.
Yeah, I'll come to you this time, Matty. And I heard something interesting about Nuno the other day, in which he referenced when they got beat by Sevilla. in the Europa League last season. And he almost said that Wolves had gone as far as they could do from being a counter-attacking side. So the change to 4 at the back this season, almost taking them away from what they knew. And you've seen at times that they've gone back to 3 at the back when it's not really been working for him. But he felt that was the best next step for Wolves. So for them to get into the top 6 and start competing more with the top 6, he felt that they had to become a more possession-based side rather than a counter-attacking side, which they've tried to do this season. But do you think anyone will realistically break into that top 6? And I know Leicester have come close and they're probably as close as anyone will get. But for a team like Wolves, do you think that's realistic for them to break into the top 6? Or is Nuno just trying to take that next step, which isn't really realistic for a club of Wolves' stature?
No, I think Wolves have proved over the last couple of seasons they're more than capable of breaking into that top 6, especially with Arsenal being in poor form at the minute. So that takes away one club already. But I think Wolves just, for me personally, I don't think they're as strong as they have been in the past couple of seasons. I know the league table obviously suggests that, but I mean, in terms of the squad as well, they've lost some really influential players. You look at Diogo Jota going to Liverpool, Raul Jimenez with his fractured skull this year, Matt Doherty, Johnny's only just come back from a ACL injury. So let's not forget Wolves have been pretty unfortunate with injuries, and they've, like I say, they've lost quite a few players, and they've not been able to have that established back five this year. Like over the past few years, Wolves' back five you could name it every week, just like Burnley's. You could name Burnley's back four every week, but they've just not got that. I can't put my finger on it. I can't put my finger on what's wrong with Wolves this year, but they just don't look as strong going forward or defensively, and having to rely on young Fabio Silva. That he looks a good player, and he looks like he'll be a good player in the future. But if we're all honest, he's just not ready for it at the moment. But I think Wolves are, in the long run, hopefully we will see them break into the top 6. Like I say, they've come close the past couple of seasons, but this year for them's definitely a write-off. And I think they're one of these clubs who are definitely missing the support in the stadium.
Yeah, go on, Rory. We were talking off air before about Fabio Silva, and he certainly hasn't hit the heights so far, has he? And do you think he will do in time at Wolves? Is it just an adaptation process, obviously coming in from abroad? Or is he just someone who you might see fall by the wayside once Jimenez returns?
I mean, I never say never when it comes to a player as young as he is, because he's still, 18, 19? So there's every chance he can turn it around, but even for a young player that you're paying, if you pay 30 million for a player, you expect better than what he's giving at the minute. Like, he doesn't seem to be, even when he goes to control the ball, it's just bouncing off him. It's just, you can see that he's a good player. We know that he's very highly rated. He was one of the most highly rated young players in Portugal, and they've produced a lot of talents over the last few years. But it really doesn't look good for him at the moment. It doesn't help that with the injury to Raul Jimenez, he was probably brought in to play a lot more of a bit part role rather than playing most weeks, like a lot of minutes. They were probably planning to bring him in slowly, but he's kind of been thrown in at the deep end. Like I said, the signing of Willian Jose probably makes it a bit easier to maybe take him out of the firing line a bit, because I know a couple of Wolves fans have been on his case because his performances haven't been up to scratch. But like you said before, Chris, about Nuno talking about the style of play that Wolves are playing, it's very similar to what's happened at Blackburn the last season or so, where we were playing a lot of counter-attacking football, but now we want to push on. So you come to start playing a lot more possession-based football, but that comes with its own challenges, because now you've got teams who'll sit back and defend, and you have to break them down. You've got to play with a much higher line than you was doing, so you're a lot more exposed. It'll take a bit of adjusting for Wolves to get used to this. So I probably agree with Nick, where I'd say once maybe they're used to it, or maybe they get a couple of signings that suit the more possession-based style that they want to play, maybe they'll come back stronger next season and give it a really good go.
Yeah, definitely. I think I'd agree with the Purrier there. Next season, probably for Wolves. And coming on to the final game of the fifth round, Chelsea just beat Barnsley 1-0 last night. Not really much of a cup tie in the terms of it wasn't exactly a thriller for the neutral, but for Chelsea and Chelsea fans, they'll be made up to get through to the quarterfinals. Thomas Tuchel come in there and done a great job. 5 games in, they've only conceded 1 goal, which was an own goal, just a defensive lapse of concentration against Sheffield United. And I think Chelsea fans should actually be quite excited about what the future holds. Again, they're pushing for the top 4 again now, which under Lampard they somewhat lost the sense of direction in many ways. So, I mean, as a United fan, Nick, yourself, who are pushing for probably top 4 now, if we say that it's a long shot that you're going to catch City, do you think Chelsea could catch yourselves this season?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, with the way that the season's gone as well, there's thrown up some bizarre results. So I think absolutely, you don't know what's down the line. And, yeah, if I had money and I was going to put money on who was going to win the league, I would say City. But again, it's hard to predict that they're not going to have a blip, because they had their blip early in the season. They could go to the end of the season undefeated, but who knows what's around the corner. It's like when United got to the top of the league, for me, it was one of those, like, enjoy it, but at the same time, don't get too carried away with it, because a couple of results and you find yourself slipping down the league. So Chelsea were on 39 points in 5th spot, and they're only a point outside the top 4. They've shored up at the back, like you said. They've only conceded 1 goal since Tuchel's come in, and they're grinding results out, and that's what it's all about. Sometimes it doesn't matter how pretty the football is. It's just a case of get through the game, get the 3 points, or get the win in the cup and get out of there. And for me, especially in the cup competitions, that's how I see it. I'm not really fussed about the performances, because it's just a one-off game. So just do what you've got to do, get in there, get out of there with the win, and progress. And that's what Chelsea obviously did last night. And they could go on. They're going to be right there, I think, towards the end of the competition in the final, semi-finals, finals. I think they'll go through. And so, who knows? Hey, that's where they're going to probably plant all their eggs in terms of winning a trophy in the FA Cup, I would say, this season. And I'm hoping to break into that top 4. But, I don't think the top 4 is all done and dusted. Yeah, I think there's plenty more twists and turns along the way.
Yeah, I think the top 4 is probably one of the most intriguing battles yet to be decided in the Premier League. So I can certainly think of 8 teams who are definitely in the mix up to now. Perhaps obviously one of the spots has gone with City, but the rest is certainly up for grabs. Someone who can just put 3 or 4 wins together, and all of a sudden you're in pole position for that last spot. But go on, Rory. Go on to about Chelsea. Sorry.
Yeah, with Chelsea, I'd probably say the results have definitely improved since Thomas Tuchel took over. Still unbeaten, but the performances are still leaving a lot to be desired. They were quite fortunate, I think, to get away from this game unscathed, because Barnsley put up a hell of a fight. They put in a really good performance. I think Tammy Abraham had to clear one off the line. There was some really good chances from Barnsley. And Chelsea really didn't look like they were that much better. They didn't look like a side that were, like you say, chasing top 4 in the Premier League, while Barnsley are currently sitting 13th in the Championship. It was a lot closer than I think a lot of people would have anticipated. But I think Thomas Tuchel will start to get the best out of some of these Chelsea players. I think the fact that he's managed to improve the results in such a short space of time shows how effective he can be. But I think a lot of Chelsea fans will still want to see the performances improve quite a bit.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. Not necessarily the best performance, and Chelsea fans will probably be happy just to get through to the next round. But ultimately, in the long run, they're having a lot of possession, but not really doing that much with it. And that's almost been the story of the time under Tuchel, where they've won games, got results, but they've dominated large periods of the game without actually sweeping anyone away. Now, whether that'll come in time, obviously Tuchel needs time to put his own stamp on the squad, and will ultimately we'll have to wait until the summer to see what happens with that. Lampard was back quite heavily, so you'd imagine this summer there perhaps won't be as much money there to spend. But once the likes of Havertz and Werner get properly settled into English football, if these guys hit the ground running next season, then Chelsea could be almost certainly a title contender. But we're going to come on to the quarter-final draw now, and we've touched on it briefly before, but if I come to you, Matty, which team left in the competition for you has a great chance of reaching a semi-final? We spoke about Southampton, obviously Chelsea at home to Sheffield United, and the other two ties are certainly in the balance. But out of probably Chelsea and Southampton on paper, which of them sides would you be looking at and saying they've got a brilliant chance to get into the semi-finals here and get a trip to Wembley?
No, I think you're right, Chris. You look at Chelsea at home to Sheffield United. No disrespect to Sheffield United, but we saw what Chelsea did to us when we went there a week ago. They absolutely passed us off the park, and we never really put a glove on him, did we? Really laid a glove on him rather. So I think you're looking at Chelsea. Chelsea, I'd imagine, a go through. You'd imagine, no disrespect to Everton, you never know with how they played the other night, but you'd imagine Man City would turn Everton over. We all know what Pep's like. He just loves winning. He'll probably go over with a strong team, and you'd imagine they'd do enough to beat Everton. Southampton again, really good opportunity to get to a semi-final. I think you said before Christopher, about him last getting to a FA Cup final and getting to Wembley. I can't remember when you said, but I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they got to Wembley in 2018. I think Chelsea knocked them out 1-0 with an Olivier Giroud goal, I think, in the FA Cup semi-final in 2018, if I'm not mistaken. But no, Southampton, again, have got a great chance to progress and go on to Wembley, but don't underestimate Bournemouth. We all said the other day that we were all expecting a Burnley win, but Bournemouth showed up, and like I said before, they fully deserved a win. So I wouldn't write Bournemouth off. And then we've got Leicester versus Man United. That'd be a really tough one to call. That could go either way. It's too close to call, but again, I'd say out of the three rather, who are looking to go to Wembley. You'd imagine Man City would go through, Southampton and Chelsea, but the mouth-watering tie I'd say is definitely Leicester versus Man United, because that genuinely could go either way.
Yeah, I think at this point it looks as though it's City's to lose. With greatest respect to Everton, they're going to have to put up some performance to beat City. So if I said to you, Rory, it's City's to lose, what would you say?
I'd agree with that. Just based on City's performances in the British competitions the last few years, I think it's the Carabao Cup they've won like 3 or 4 out, like the last 3 or 4 years. They've got a very good record in these knockout competitions. I mean, it's normally Arsenal that come and win the FA Cup, but they're out of it. So I would say that City are probably the best bet now. But like you say, Southampton have got a really good chance of getting to Wembley. Anybody left in it would have wanted the last team outside of the league in the draw. So I think I think Bournemouth will maybe embrace it because they can go into the tie with no pressure. Nobody's expecting them to win. They can go in and take the game to Southampton. But like you said, that Leicester Man United tie is really the big one that everybody's looking out for.
Yeah, that one's certainly the tie of the round, and I'll come to you for the final word on that one. Really, Nick, it involves your side, Man United, and it just seems like a potential banana skin for United. It's almost like the type of game that United stereotypically would lose.
Yeah, I mean, again this season, because it's been so bizarre, it is one of those games that we could turn up and fold and get beat, and we'll all be so annoyed. But then on the other hand, with it being away from Old Trafford where we play some of our best football, we could turn up and absolutely turn them over, and when I say turn them over, we could run right. You just don't know what United are going to turn up, and that's a frustrating thing. But I think there's a lot of pressure this season on Solskjaer for a lot of people to land a trophy. I mean, for me, I'm still 100% Ollie in, have been throughout, even when we've dipped. But I do think there's going to be that pressure on him this season that he's going to have to put some silverware in the cabinet. We can't be this team that gets to semi-finals and then doesn't quite reach the final. He's going to have to go all the way in some competition. And you look at the games that we've got. In the league, we've still got some big teams to play in the league. So we're going to have to go on an almighty run and hope that City slip up to win that. Europa League, our tie against Sociedad is not going to be easy at all. They're a really good side. So he could be looking at the FA Cup as the one where we are going to pick the silverware up if we're going to win anything. And I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on him. But I think that for the players as well, I think if they can get over the line and get a trophy in the cabinet, take some pressure off them as well. And it shows that they're winners, and that's what they need after a few semi-finals and missing out on going to the final. I think they need to kind of go all the way and just get that winning mentality distilled into them. And I think that kind of, if we can compete with City till the end of the season and an FA Cup, I think people will kind of snatch your hand off and say, do you know what, I'll take that this season. But it's going to be a tough game. It's not going to be easy going there at all.
Yeah, absolutely. I think United could definitely turn up away from home. Like you said, they've played some of the best football away from home. And if they let Leicester have the ball, we all know how dangerous United can be on the counter. And it could almost be a game that plays into United's hands in a way, because we know Leicester love having the ball. And United almost thrive playing on the counter. But just to round things up before we let Rory go and watch Blackburn, I'll come to each of you. And just in a word, who do we say is going to win the cup this season? So we'll start with you, Matty.
100% Manchester City.
You, Nick.
I'm going to go with the mighty Reds, mate. I'm going to say that United are going to bring some silverware home.
Rory.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with Matty and go with City.
I'm going to go with City as well. We go 3 votes to 1 in favour of City there. So I'm sorry, Nick, but you've been outnumbered, and the FA Cup's going to the proper half of Manchester, if I may say so. But that wraps up another episode. We'll be back next week after another weekend of Premier League and EFL action to round up all the proceedings from the weekend. Thanks for listening.